So we're very lucky, and I'm personally very excited to be joined here by Joey Leung from Terracotta Distribution. Joey, thanks so much for making some time for this today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me and having me on, Chris. This is really, really cool experience. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we, they live by film. We've been very lucky and have spoken with a lot of Blu-ray sort of boutique labels, right? The ones that are actually publishing houses for these discs and getting them manufactured. And I think it's really fascinating to talk to people like in Terracotta, for example, because you play a really important role in getting it into people's hands, right?
Yeah.
If there is any chance that anybody listening doesn't know Terracotta, do you mind just doing a quick 30, 60-second on what you do, both from a distribution side? I think, and if you want to talk about, the streaming part of the business as well, I think that's super interesting. But anything you want to talk about. So
Yeah, no, that's just pretty much it. So we're three parts to it is a distribution label in itself, your own label, acquiring products and releasing Blu-rays. We're a store as well. So someone like imagine the Amazon, but for Asian films, Blu-rays and DVDs. And then we've started, like you said, building a streaming site, only currently for UK and Ireland, but it's early days and bootstrapping that and we'll see how we go. So three
I love
parts
it.
of it.
You used a term there called bootstrapping. So this is something I think is super interesting. So the impression that I get, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that's always drawn me to Terracotta is, as opposed to going and supporting Amazon, if I go buy from Terracotta, it feels like I'm kind of directly supporting Joey. Is that true? Like maybe and your team, but it feels much more personal and intimate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a small operation. We're not a corporate entity. We're doing this all part time with film fans banded together just to get stuff that we've seen, especially on the label side, right? Stuff that we've seen and we want to get other people to see as well. Almost evangelical in some ways. Hey, we've seen this great film. Why haven't you seen it yet? Let's get it out.
Yeah. And so there's three kind of components to talk about, there within what you just said. I think one of the things is interesting to me. The way that I got to know you was through the distribution of third window films, right? And I guess like the store aspect, right? The e-commerce aspect.
Yeah.
So was there, maybe can you talk a little bit about, why you chose to focus on Asian films, kind of where that passion comes from, and how you got connected with Adam? Or I know it's more than just Third Window, but just sort of how that process of how you started distributing some of that.
Yeah, so on the store itself, we're kind of working backwards now. It's quite interesting to like a reverse chronology of the Terracotta history, right? So right now we are focused more as a physical store, online store, and that came about just before lockdown, where we realized we had a lot of excess stock that wasn't selling that well. So we thought, hang on, if other people are shopping for things, they may not be googling or looking just for our titles. And I would like to, as a shopper, not have to go to each individual, Eureka, 88, Arrow, Criterion, and check out and pay the fee that way, right? So why not just do a one-stop destination for Asian films? I don't think that exists at the moment. So then we asked around different labels and said, do you have any excess stock you want to get rid of? Any coming out of license period? We can buy bulk cheap off you and we'll start our own store that way. A lot of them were very happy to do so. A lot of them did have a lot of excess stock to get rid of, which was great in the early days to just get anything you can get hands on. Nowadays, we're somewhat more curatorial. We only try and pick like stuff that we know people would like to buy and that I would like to watch as well to an extent.
Hmm.
And yeah, third window is a big part of it. We can, when we go backwards in time, talk about our relationship between Terracotta and third window as well. And yeah, a lot of the third window stuff that comes through us. I was lucky enough to be invited on a podcast with those guys, and it turns out that we give the highest percentage cuts back as a retailer back to third windows directly. And because of that, they said they were able to then keep running and supporting them to release newer films as well, which for me was very gratifying to hear that. Just this little quirk of me deciding to buy other people's titles has now led to a significant sort of income for third window films to then fund their future release, which for me is almost humbling and almost like amazing, So yeah, and then lockdown happened, of course, around the world, and a lot of people can get to stores, and it almost had to accelerate the model of we want to buy our film. Where do we go apart from Amazon or whatever other mail order companies people use? And we just took off from there.
Oh, I love that, and I love the camaraderie that exists. That's the one thing that's been a bit surprising in a good way for me as I've gone deeper into this industry, is how connected it all is and how everyone really is kind of supportive of each other. Um, and unfortunately, even some of the labels that we love, if you look at some of the distribution they've put up, they are taking quite a big cut from the people that are manufacturing the discs. So it's nice to see that you've been able to keep that high margin for some of your partners and for Adam. So going backwards a little bit, then it seems like the label was first.
Well, I'm trying to remember actually whether the
Okay.
label was first or whether we did the film festival first. It was around about the same sort of time anyway. And how that started was I've grown up in the UK, right? So I was born in the UK, and like a lot of second generation people, you have somewhat an identity crisis because at home you're this Chinese kid watching Chinese movie, eating Chinese food, and speaking Chinese all day. And then when you go out, like people make fun of you for being Chinese, right? And then sometimes like your friends come over for play dates or whatever, or come chill and hang out when you're teenagers. You don't have play dates when you're teenagers, so they come and you just hang out and then we'd have some Asian films on in the background. They'd stop and look at it and think, what's this? This is incredible. And they'd actually stop and watch the whole thing, whether it be Jackie Chan or Aces Go Places or
Uh-huh.
Chinese Ghost Story or something that they hadn't seen that before, right? So
Uh-huh.
I mean, we think back to the early 80s, the sort of films we were watching, the sort of TV we were watching back then. And then suddenly someone hits you with some Jackie Chan or Jet Li type stuff, right? And you think, wow, this is new. And then shortly after that, you see things like Jonathan Ross over in the UK, the TV show presenter. He would be starting to interview Jackie Chan, etc., post
Yeah.
Armour of God, those sort of times, you know. I think those interviews have actually made it onto extras on Louis Fifth. So anyway, that's me growing up, and then I got into like recommending films to people, and then I found my way, fast forward quite a few years later, working in the finance departments of studios like Disney, Sony, Universal, and I saw they were releasing some Asian films, but only because they'd been given them as part of like their pipeline from their Asian company that they have to release stuff in the UK.
Okay.
And of course, the focus was very much on your, I don't know, like your Casino Royales or your Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever it is, right? So there's very little focus on like Korean action films, gangster films, or anything of that kind. And then I thought, wow, could I do this myself? The same approach as a studio, but without the studio overhead and staff, just the one man band
Uh-huh.
myself and my wife, maybe. Let's just look into it. Where will we make DVDs? How do we even license the rights to make these DVDs? And where do we go to speak to people? And we started attending a few film festivals and film markets, which is where these films get exhibited and buyers will go buy them up and make DVDs out of them for their own territory. So we started doing that basically. Our first title was Hansel and Gretel. But at the same time, we saw so many cool films in this market. So we'd fly to like Korea or whatever. It sounds really glamorous and amazing, which it was the first few times. But after a while, it becomes like work, right? So then we'd see a great load of films where we think, oh, we want to release this, but potentially it's just a bit too high an asking price from the sellers. Maybe we could start a festival and get people to bring their films over and
Mm.
exhibit it that way. And that was really quite a lot of fun as well. So I met a lot of new friends who I'm still in touch with today who do like the front of house or posters and things like that. And just a group of like 50 film fans just running the festival. And that was really cool. We got to the level of attracting decent sponsorship from KLM Airlines,
Wow.
from the Radisson hotel groups as well in the UK. I don't know if you have the Radisson group in the US.
Yeah, 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 sure.
Yeah, so they were sponsoring us with some accommodation. We were therefore able to bring actors and actresses and directors over and choreographers, and they would do workshops. And we'd have drinks with them, and the
Wow.
public would have drinks with them. And then the actors and directors liked it as well because they were reconnecting back with their pre-successful selves before they made films, and they were the film nerds as well. Going to the festivals, and so it was really nice for like all round ecosystem that way.
When was this
Yeah.
roughly? Was this like in a timeline?
I think it was 08, 09. I
Okay.
think well, 09 was the start of it, actually. 09 was the start of it. And then that went on for about 4 or 5 years. It wasn't economically viable. Even though we had all these great sponsors, there was a lot of it was in kind, meaning that they'd give us stuff as opposed to cash. But there was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of cash requirement to run a festival, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hard work. Definitely couldn't have done it without the team of people who volunteered through the years as well. And that was really, really fun working with them. And then we just focused on the label at the same time as well. And we released a bunch of films. Back then, it was a lot easier because you'd have Korean Film Council investment to export overseas their sort of culture. And this is pre-Gangnam Style, right? So this is before K-pop and before
Uh-huh.
K-pop became the main
Uh-huh.
thing. You can see the seeds of this happening. Korean government definitely wanted to export Korean culture and gave a lot of funding to overseas exhibitors. That then stopped happening And so a lot of the releases that were economically viable for us to put in cinemas and tour them around the UK, therefore did not become viable anymore. So we had to reduce the amount of films we released.
So does that was that on the back of some of the success that Park Chan-wook had internationally, or was that just like was there any tie-in to why Korea was in that timeline was trying to promote Korean cinema? Do you think?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, so with Tartan in the UK, and I'm sure you know the Tartan
Yeah,
Registry for Asia is streaming
yeah.
name. They've done a great job of opening up Asian cinema as a whole. Where there was, I think it probably started with The Ring back in the late '90s,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and those sort of like titles, where it was like really quite groundbreaking for anyone to look at. And throughout those sort of like 10, 11 year period, you then have, of course, Old Boy. That was a landmark event, right? Winning at Cannes.
Mm-hmm.
And that just became like a massive phenomenon around the world. I think then people accepted, okay, it's not just Japan that does weird films and Hong Kong that does action films. Korea's now first on the map now. We should be watching South Korean films as well.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, but look through their history. They've got all these stuff all the way back in the 60s as well. You know? So it's a rich history of Korean films to be discovered. Yeah.
Well, I love the festival approach because when I lived in Dallas in 2000 to 2005, at that time there was a strong Asian film festival there. It might even be called the Dallas Asian Film Festival. It's something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And that's how I got introduced to Takashi Miike. That's how I got introduced to Park Chan-wook. And like they didn't bring in, I wouldn't say they brought in celebrities, but they brought the films in,
Right.
and just the exposure to to that stuff is, and the younger Kurosawa, Kiyoshi Kurosawa. So I got to see some of these in the theater, which was such an amazing experience. And so I
Right.
fell
The
deeply in
Pulse,
love.
Creepy Cairo, all that sort of stuff. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it was such a cool experience to be in a room with people watching these and experiencing them a lot of times for the first time, especially with something like Ichi the Killer.
Yeah. Oh my
Just
God. Yeah.
to see the reaction to that.
Yeah. The audience
Um,
reaction counts for so much when you enjoy a film.
Totally. That's great. Okay, so then you're on the label for a few years, and then then like you said in the
And
pandemic you decided.
quick question before we move on chronologically again. Are you saying that without the Dallas Film Festival, you probably would not have discovered Asian films, or is there enough in Dallas for you to be exposed to it?
Dallas
Like
is an
theatrically,
interest.
would they run theatrical releases?
Yeah, Dallas is an interesting place. At the time, I don't know about today. I mean, this was almost 20 years ago now. At the time, they had more um, screens playing international and classic films, like art house films, than any per capita than anywhere in the country.
Oh, really?
So at that time, there was more than 25 screens playing art house and international films.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So they were looking for content, right?
Right,
So there was an opportunity if you were the type of person that sought this out, you had a bevy of options spread
right.
across a huge metroplex.
That's cool.
And I assume most of those theaters are still there. A lot of them are kind of like cultural landmarks in the city. Um, but yeah, I would say that the focus, I mean, even still, even with all those screens, they were still showing oh, what's that one that didn't age well? Garden State. It was still more of that type of stuff,
Okay,
right?
okay,
Than necessarily Asian cinema. Or it was like the kind of films that you learn about in film school, right?
right,
That was it was like new kind of American independent or like classic like film school type of art
right,
house
right,
films.
right.
So there was only a few screens that were commonly playing in the broad sense of Asian cinema, and then there was a separate group of theaters that would play like let's call it Indian like Bollywood type cinema, right? But as far as Southeast Asian cinema, we weren't getting any of the Indonesian films coming out or the Filipino films coming out at that time, and there were some cool action films coming out of the region at
Yeah,
that time.
massively, right? I mean, that's the same over here. I think it's very rare for even the hardcore Southeast Asian fan or East Asian film fans to name Indonesian directors or seen an Indonesian film or Filipino film. It's started to now, right? Because we've had like Diaz and Brilliant Mendoza have some theatrical success over in the UK. Um,
Yeah,
and of course, The Raid and all those sort of films as well. That
exactly,
come out,
exactly. Yeah.
Merrentau that way there. It's been really, really cool. I think.
Well, that's a great tie-in, actually, a great segue. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was it feels like if you look at your website right now and you see things like Tiger Cage trilogy, right, or the Police Story 3 coming out, like it feels like an exciting time for Asian cinema as far as the physical media goes.
Yeah, massively for the last couple of years now, I would say. And then I'm literally every day waking up thinking, is this going to end? Like, are they going to run out of releases to pick from this vast catalog? Or are people going to get bored of buying? Are they going to run out of shelf space even and stop buying Blu-ray one day? So, and it's just incredible. All the films I've seen as a kid or young teenager growing up, and they're being re-released, and there's so many non-Asians into it. That's the thing that really fascinates me. It's like so many non-Asian people now. It's like almost the reverse of growing up. Like you almost like hide your identity. You want to play down your Chineseness. But then in now as well, it's so accepting and people are seeking it out. It's great.
Yeah, and it seems like that martial arts movies are a great segue into quote unquote Asian cinema, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's a
you're right.
the
Yeah,
yeah.
even the flavor of martial arts depends as well. I mean, you've got the really hardcore, old school Shaw Brothers martial arts people who will probably only exist within that category and know the difference between the different English dubs across the world for a
Uh-huh.
specific film, right? And then you've got the people probably slightly later entrants, the 80s and 90s martial arts fans, who will like the modern day action and the gun through and all that sort of stuff. And it seems even within that you've got two camps. Much like horror, people talk about Asian cinema and they talk about Asian horror. But horror in itself has many flavors. Where you've got like supernatural, occult, folk horror, where it's the slasher killer horror, and so you've got different camps, haven't you? They're trying to like different things. So yeah,
Well, that's
sure.
the fun thing about some of the directors that have been able to kind of achieve this international success is they're like the gateway drug, right?
Yeah,
It's like you
100%.
get in, and then all of a sudden you're watching a Nobuhiko Obayashi's 3 film set from
Yeah,
his
exactly,
Kadokawa years, and you're
exactly,
like, that's not where you start. But then,
exactly. That's
yeah,
where you end up, right? But then, what's your take on remakes? Then, do remakes have a place to then fit into that journey for people? Do you think?
okay. So I'm gonna be. This is actually something I'm quite passionate about. If you look at so the one that first really like rankled me, like caused a lot of like stress in me, was when hold on, what was the name of the one in the U.S. That Scorsese movie that won Best Director,
Departed,
Departed. Thank you.
right?
And I had just coincidentally had just seen Infernal Affairs like about a year before that, again in one of these art house screens. And the way that they talked about The Departed was like Scorsese's great achievement, right? And
Right.
I get it, like it's a good movie, but like it's not. I mean, it's not really his. Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
he was a curator of bringing this amazing script and idea into a Western audience, and so he gets some credit for that. But
Yeah.
like, bring the Infernal Affair guys up on stage if you're going to take the award.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah. 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 You're right about that. And
so.
that's. I mean, so for me, I don't know where my feelings land on this. I don't know genuinely because I've not seen any stats right or talked to anyone about this. How many people have seen Departed, then wanted to figure out what Infernal Affairs was like, then watched the whole trilogy, then thought, oh, Hong Kong films, very cool, let's watch some more Hong Kong films, then went into Japan and Korea action films or Japanese horror or whatever, right? I don't know how many people took that journey. And I don't know how many people just watched, like you just said, watched Departed, oh, just Scorsese movie, cool, end of, and that was it. But I do get what you mean about the credit bit, so for sure.
And went deeper into Scorsese's catalog or something,
Yeah,
which
no, that's probably a lot of people might have done that. Actually, like Bloody Rascal or whatever.
which I mean, it's a good catalog. It's nothing wrong,
Yeah,
but
it's brilliant.
it's that point of recognition and stuff. So yeah, no, I think um I don't know if you I mean, I'm fine with the idea of remakes, especially sometimes there's certain ideas that if you just tweak it slightly, it plays better for different audiences. You've seen some examples where like there was a German release of Funny Games,
All right,
and
yeah,
they changed it for the American audience, but they didn't actually change it. They had
yes,
the exact same everything with different
pretty much.
actors,
Yeah,
and
shot
it
for shot.
didn't. I don't think it played as well because it's like you almost needed to like translate it a bit, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I think there's
Sometimes they
times.
got Hanukkahs.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, I don't know. I'm okay generally. What about you? I mean, is
Yeah,
this?
I really don't know. I mean, a lot of people feel ownership. People who are very passionate about Asian movies feel ownership. It's like, oh, they're taking our thing, and but it's not our thing. It's not your thing. It's the creator's thing. The creator created it, and if they're happy to, exploit the story overseas with a different storyteller in a different language, that's their prerogative. But at the same time, I totally get where if you feel that there's no credit given back to the original source, then that becomes a problem. And I
Yeah,
really do hope people do then discover through the Ring remake, the Grudge remake, and all that sort of stuff, right? I hope they do discover the original in that way.
Exactly. You know, this is the best thing I can think of. Like the in the 60s and 70s, all the Italians, people kind
Yeah,
of joke about the fact that they were just ripping off American
yeah,
movies and not giving them
yeah,
credit, right? So it's
yeah.
a bit of a double standard, right? Because
Yeah. But then, having said that, the Italians, like, spaghetti westerns all came from Kurosawa. So how many people watched Clint Eastwood and then went to watch, a Kurosawa
it's
movie?
so
Who
true.
knows? Same sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. There's a certain, yeah. I think that's probably the best way to land. I mean, there's a certain percentage of the people that use that as a gateway to like
Yeah.
jump into this whole exciting world.
Mm.
So what about you? So within the world of quote unquote Asian cinema, is there a type that you're drawn to? Where do you go to
Probably
relax?
action because I started with action, right?
Okay.
So action comedy. I keep using Jackie Chan as a reference, but I really like this brand of entertainment because it is, that whole Buster Keaton, theatrical, somersaulting circus. It's very rare to see blood on the Jackie Chan film. There are some films that are like quite violent, but it's just entertainment. So it's family, it's awesome. It's good to watch with the kids,
Yeah.
and the stories are funny sometimes. Yeah. So
What about
that sort of
what about
style.
Stephen Chow in the comedy
Even
action?
Chow, I actually didn't like the first time around. I thought the slapstick humor was too extreme, and I'm very surprised that non-Cantonese speakers like Stephen Chow films because a lot of it is local colloquial puns. A lot of the films he makes, but the overall story arc is great. Like, Beijing with love or whatever, or the business of the cop, and all that stuff's really fun to watch. Kung Fu Hustle, amazing, right? That's universal.
Yeah.
But within that, a lot of the nuances, and that's the same with a lot of local comedies, I guess, is there's a lot of language puns, linguistic puns that you wouldn't necessarily get, but that may not affect your story watching or storytelling too much. In the same way that I don't know, if I watch a Thai film or a Korean film, there may be some local puns and references to local celebrities that I would just go over my head, but I'd still enjoy the film, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe it's just more like if you see it for the third time, you start to pick up on some of those things. But the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
time
exactly.
through, you're just enjoying it. Like, is it? I think it's either Kung Fu Hustle or Shaolin Soccer, where there's like some amazing business with dumplings and like slow motion and like kicking
Yeah,
around the
yeah.
dump. And
Shaolin
there's
Soccer.
just is that Shaolin Soccer? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's just some of that like the physicality that he brings into his movies is
Yeah,
so
it's
creative
great.
and fun.
It's really, really cool. It's such an entertainer as well. It's really, really fun. I think he's what's the rumor? Is it Kung Fu Hustle 2 that's coming out soon? He's trying to get Kung Fu Hustle 2 off
Yeah,
the ground. Yeah,
I think he's either I don't know where it stands, but I remember hearing a little bit about that.
yeah, that'll be pretty awesome.
So okay, so back to Terracotta for a moment. So you're right now working with 88 Films, Third Window, Eureka, Arrow, and is that right? And maybe one more, Cine Asia, is that
Yeah,
right?
MPM and BFI as well.
Okay.
We started to stock a lot of BFI stuff and got a lot of their titles sat in the box right next to me. I still haven't listed up on the site yet, so I need to get on that this weekend, I think.
Hmm. And is that basically where you're? I mean, to the extent that you're comfortable talking about this, but are you essentially buying lots from them and then just trying to resell it? Is that kind of how that
Exactly that.
works?
Exactly that. It's just a
Okay.
typical merchant with a website. I'm like any other retailer going and trying to negotiate terms. Obviously, with the small guys, you don't get great terms.
Uh-huh.
And then they'll deliver the stock. We'll fulfill it based on whatever orders we have. We have to try and guess how many of each item to buy and learn our lessons the hard way that way. And sometimes you have overstock and put them on sale. Yeah, so typical store. I think you call them mom and pop stores in the US.
Exactly. Exactly. And at the moment where somebody places an order, is it going to your computer and are you
Yeah.
packing it or do you have
Yeah,
someone that
it
helps?
literally is me. Yeah, I'm packing stuff. I'm looking at the orders. I'm trying to decipher where the orders are coming from. So, for
Uh-huh.
example, I may have run a Google ad and someone's, clicked on the link and coming through that, and then I know Google ads work, so I put my money on Google, and that,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm just packing orders, and sometimes trying to watch the latest Asian release at the same time as well. So I'm packing as well, so
Oh,
to have
I
that
guess
running in the background.
that's a good excuse to watch some movies, I guess, while you're doing
Oh
some
yeah,
work.
yeah, exactly.
Um, so you have a full-time job. You're building Terracotta into this machine that's spreading Asian cinema to the world. You have a family. Uh, that's why do you do this? That's a lot.
I don't know. I think I started. I can't stop. That's
Okay.
probably just like the gambling table, just like doesn't know how to walk away. But I don't know. I think literally, how do I stop though? Because I've got so many orders coming in, right? I can't then say, "Oh, sorry, that's it. I'm calling it a day." I'd have to refund everyone and send all this stock back. And So yeah, I don't know why I'm doing it. I guess because it started with I don't like what's on TV. I might as well do something with my time. Most people finish work and they either go get really drunk, or
Uh-huh.
they go out for a meal, or they'll sit and watch Love Island or something like that, right? And that's kind of not me. And I would spend my evenings either learning stuff, going to do professional qualifications, or just try and learn a language or something, or and then all this stuff has been a learning. I think it started off. Oh, this is what happened. So my big love is music, and I
Okay.
really wanted to run a music label. And I
Okay.
thought doing this film stuff, it's kind of synonymous with running a music label, right? Same sort
Yeah.
of thing. Physical, it's records, it's the same thing you manufacture, you warehouse, you fulfill orders, right? But obviously, it's two completely different industries because who you meet is completely different. So now I have no contact in the music world now at all. So I wouldn't be able to set up a label or get an artist or whatever. Whereas I know a lot of people, mainly in the sort of film distribution side, I can probably go start another label if I wanted to. Right?
What?
So then I thought I'd spend the evening just learning and just figuring things out. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, 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 no. Please go ahead.
No,
That
that
makes
was
a lot
it.
of sense.
That was it. So that's yeah. So what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy who passively watches crap TV, or do you want to just do something and try and figure things out and enjoy things?
I love that. I love that. What's the kind of music that you would produce if you had the label?
It was house at one point
Okay.
and hip hop at one point as well. Actually, did start with a friend, a artist management company. Back then, the philosophy was, well, we'd see all these artists getting signed by the big labels and being always unfavorable terms
Mm-hmm.
slash screwed over. Why don't
Uh-huh.
we start something that's a bit 360? So whatever's good for the artist is good for us. It's good for their career. They get a share. It's almost like a cooperative, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we sign them, we promote them, everything, merch, touring, yeah, help them get their records out.
I don't think it would make sense in 2022, but 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, my brother and I bantied around the idea of starting a label where you actually put the bands on salary and then you work out a deal to where you keep like a certain amount and then everything after that they keep anyways. We were trying to make it work and we never got it off the ground.
No,
But
that
yeah, I
does
kind
sound.
of
There is something on that. I mean, think about back in the times of the medieval ages, you would have someone as a patron salarying you, like Mozart, or whatever, or some poet back in the 1400s.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have a patron salarying you to go and just go get some stuff done.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to make a little bit of a better life for musicians. But anyways,
Yeah,
different podcast.
different podcast. Let's start that one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, okay, well, so and I was surprised to find that you were centered in the UK, so only because you're so comfortable shipping internationally. So for you, I guess it just doesn't matter. Like if people are willing to pay shipping, you'll go anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. The only headache is when there are delays overseas, and during lockdown towards the tail end of last year in Q4, there was a lot of. So we're recording from 2022. So for reference, it's 2021 towards Christmas time. There were quite a lot of delays due to COVID, especially going to the US as well. So the only impact on me is following up with customer service type queries of where's my order,
Hmm.
apart from that, yeah, I don't see why we should, as a retailer. I mean, if you're a distributor, you are limited by your license agreement to your territory. But as a retailer, if people want to buy and have to pay shipping, I think exporting is fine. I think until
How
someone listens to this podcast and tells me otherwise.
how much do you have to navigate the whole like region coding of the Blu-ray players?
Yeah, we try and be as upfront as possible, but we still get people right back and saying this doesn't work on my thing. And I said, well, it's region B. Well, this is the first time I've heard of region. What do you mean region? And then we have to go through the education process. I feel like almost now I should have a copy and paste answer now, just pre-canned answer so I can paste it in. But I take time to type and say, look, here's an example. Show them the website, the region coding wiki, and all that. Yeah. So overall, I don't think there is that much of a problem from the people who know what they're doing, because I think a lot of people in the US have multi-region buyers, and I do have multi-region players, and I do suggest to people, look, there's loads of great stuff coming out of Germany, Australia, not just the UK. Maybe you want to start looking at multi-region player. I have no idea how much they cost. But
They've come down a lot. I used to have a multi-region DVD player back in the day because even back then the releases coming from Hong Kong were like beautiful. They had these amazing like leather packages and all this crazy
oh
stuff.
wow,
But so I was buying that. It was harder to find that stuff 20 years ago. But so yeah, but now I just recently bought a multi-region Blu-ray player and it was like $70. It was great. It was easy.
really?
Yeah.
Wow. So when people say it's time to invest in one, it's not really that high a barrier to entry. It sounded like a 500 bucks.
No, when I bought it when I was in college, it was a dumb investment because it was like $250 or something,
Wow.
$300 back then, and I was just working a minimum wage job, um, but I
Well,
wanted
it's
to
giving
have
you a
it.
good return on your film watching, though. So it wasn't that dumb an investment, right?
Yeah, no, no, no. I didn't think it was dumb. Strictly financially speaking, there's different ways, but just ate less that month. It was fine. Uh, so okay, so where, I guess, talk to me a little bit if you're okay talking about like where is Terracotta going? Because it seems like what I'm hearing you say, like an underlying message I'm hearing in everything you're saying is that you are good at like assessing where viewing patterns and buying patterns are going and kind of adapting your business to that model, right? So you pivoted to having a store when people were buying online. Now you're introducing streaming. Do you have any vision, any sense for where Terracotta is going to continue to grow?
It's this roadmap is in my head quite a long time ago to have started streaming, and I wished with hindsight that we focused more on streaming because now streaming is ubiquitous, right? So I think streaming is where it's at. I referenced earlier back then when are people going to stop buying? I think it's not going to finish tomorrow, but there will be a point, whether it's 24, 25, or 2026, at some point, I think even if people still want to buy Blu-rays, the whole industry may start winding down because the economics of where can you make Blu-rays, those factories will start closing down because it's not just the small labels like your Eurekas, and we know Eureka and Arrow are big companies, but relative to your Sony's and your Disney,
Right,
right?
right, right, right.
So if Sony decides one day to stop manufacturing or reduce their output of Blu-ray discs, that then economically goes back in the chain, puts pressure on the plants who then can't survive if you don't take order
Mm-mm.
from Sony, right? And that's when the downward spiral the demise. And that probably will be happening sometime soon. I'm not sure when, but probably will be happening. And I think streaming is just so accessible and it's just so easy for a lot of people. I know a lot of collectors don't like streaming, some collectors do. But then streaming offers us the opportunity to show films where labels haven't released in the
Sure.
territory or made a nice package, right? And in terms of distribution, we may slow down the distribution side of it physical because we can't compete with the likes of Eureka and Arrow and 88 Films who are buying these amazing films and creating all this amazing artwork and extra features. I think they've got a really good following and a really good pattern of doing that now. So they've got their rhythm going. Don't want to disrupt that. But I can participate if they keep churning out product. I'll keep helping them sell it as well. So that's great. At least I'm participating and handling these films, which once upon a time I did want to release, but now someone else is releasing it. I'm
Yeah,
still
right.
able to play my part as a retailer. And then so yeah, the store I think will keep growing as it is, and I just want to keep learning different things like social media, new social media channels that keep coming out, paid advertising, SEO. It's a whole world of SEO we're not really focusing on. That's the search engine optimization, making sure when someone searches for Kyoshi Kurosawa that we are somewhere in the first page. Because I don't know about you, but I very rarely go to page 2 of Google, right, to see what's out
Exactly. No,
there. So
exactly.
you need to go on page 1. Right? So
That makes a lot of sense. I just am curious because, in the last really 2 years, it feels like maybe even 18 months, there's just been a flurry of Hong Kong titles, right? Both from 88 Films and Arrow to a certain extent with some of the Shaw Brothers sets. And then even Eureka's gotten into it a little bit. Even maybe 101, or maybe I'm off. But it just feels like there's a big like influx in the market right now. Are they selling well?
yeah, incredibly well. So they're
Okay, good.
limited, first of all. So there's a demand and supply thing at play here, right? So if you're only making 2,000 or 3,000 copies, I bet you there's more than 2,000 or 3,000 people who want to have a copy of that on their shelf
Yeah.
and willing to pay the £40, £50, whatever it is that they're buying at the moment. Police Story Trilogy box set, that sounds amazing to me, ultra high def, and that's
Right.
retail around the £60 mark, right?
And I think companies are being smart about it too. Like in Arrow, they're putting out the Shaw Brothers sets, but one of the ones they've included in phase two is Boxer's Omen, which you
Right.
probably have 2,000 people that want to just find the high def
Just for
copy of
that.
that.
Yeah, just for that,
And
exactly. So the holy grail of things. I mean, Supercop is great. Supercop, so many people want Supercop, and now it's in this amazing box set. Or you can buy Supercop at standard. Yeah, you're right. It's a great little strategic release, but a sort of the gem. Much like if there was a Miike box set, I mean, people keep asking me about like the Luck Dragon, for example. They really want to release that Blu-ray. So there was a Miike box set with like a dragon. That'd be pretty cool.
I've told people before. I mean, I think he's up to 120 films now or something. It's quite a lot.
Right.
But even if it was like even if it was like a phased set where it's like, the early years or something, because
Yeah.
I a lot of his early films had like a strong art house kind of quality to them. There was like a lot
Mhm.
of different style of filmmaking even, and it was very, very beautiful. Even when he had his typical like gruesome content, it was
Mm.
still in the background of a very kind of
But even
artistically
if
made
you do
film.
it in years, you'd have such an eclectic mix. You could give them like two or three different. Like one year he'd be making, I don't know, like Yataman alongside some violent gangster yakuza film. You know what I mean? It's just like he's all over the place. So I'm not sure if you want to do it chronologically or you want to do it by genre.
Thematically.
Yeah, thematically. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, either way, that's a good point though. I mean, because yeah, that's my dream set. I guess my point is, if that was if something came out that was $500, but it was like the majority of Miike films. um,
Complete PK. Oh my god, that'd be more than that. It'd be like $1,000.
yeah,
Amazing.
I don't think anybody could do complete. I mean, can you imagine even just the logistics of shipping that set?
Yeah.
Like,
Then the licensing rights is, yeah, and that's one of the things people I think need to think about as well is actually they want to watch this one, and this is where a lot of piracy comes in, right? And as a
hmm
consumer, I am not anti-piracy because I understand you want something free and you want it now. And if people have marketed it to you and told you this is a must watch, well, there's nowhere for me to watch it in my town. I need to watch it. How do I do it? You know?
hmm
So yeah, you need to understand if you wanted to license a complete Mike, he's worked for so many studios, you have to go to each studio to negotiate all the time for all the rights. It'd be such a monumental effort.
yeah, yeah, I agree. But we can live to dream. Somebody does, somebody does it in
Third
chunks.
Windows listening.
Yeah, exactly. Adam, get on it.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, it's actually there's a great connection I'm hearing even in the way you talk about your businesses between you and Adam. I imagine, yeah, just the way that even some of the phrases you're using around learning new trades in order to kind of continue to do more, and he talks about it very openly about every skill that he learns is more margin that he keeps, right?
Yeah,
And I
that's so
feel
true.
yeah,
Right. So have you interviewed Adam recently?
yeah, he was
Oh,
on
yeah.
luckily.
Great, it's a great one. Yeah, I mean, I really take my hat off. And when you talk about I've got family and whatever, and their job, Adam is like Mr. Machine. Seriously, he'll run like 20K every day. He gets up early to feed his son. He's got a newborn kid, and he's learned Japanese by himself. He's learned how to do subtitling by himself, which is a very technical thing. So he's learned to translate, which is skill number one. Number two, how to operate subtitling software, which is like learning software isn't difficult, but it's that skill of how do I cram in what he said in 30 seconds into like 2 seconds so someone can read it and understand. That in itself
Right.
is a skill, right? And having the patience to stop every sentence and type and check through what you've written. I don't think he does the R with himself. So I don't think he talks toffee, but then he'll be able to go watch all the films and source them all himself and
Yeah,
yeah, do everything. Yeah, incredible.
I sense a real kindred spirit though. It sounds like you're equally as busy in just a different part of the business. But um, well, what would you like people to know about Terracotta that I haven't asked? What
I don't think much more than what we've talked about already. It's like we're a small company. Please don't berate us if we've done something wrong. We'll always put it right. I've heard people comment on our customer service being fairly good, but you do get the odd one or two rants, and I understand that. I totally understand that. If I was a customer and something went wrong, I'd be quite angry. I don't care how big you are or how small you are. I bought something. I expect this to be perfect, right? Especially if it's a high price box set. And also the different personality types, and when you type through email, things sometimes are amplified the wrong way, and all of it.
mm-mm.
So I totally get that. I don't dislike anyone for sending in a shitty email, but I totally understand. But I would like people to be just aware that we're a small operation and we're backed by you, and we're trying to get things off the ground and deliver this sort of service. And sometimes we do offer titles cheaper on pre-order, £1 or £2 less than other websites where possible. And that massively eats into our margin, but at least we then encourage people to shop from our site. You know, we have to have some sort of USP that way. But I think our biggest USP I'd like you to know is that you pointed out already that all the labels are in one place. So if you're looking for Sanjuro as well as Ichi the Killer as well as I don't know some art house film I can't think about the moment, but you know what I mean. You transcend all
Uh-huh.
the different times and labels and geographies, then we've got everything here. So, well, trying to get everything here.
So that's a good point then. I guess one of the things we didn't talk about in streaming is kind of where you're looking to go. But as you look to grow that, you want to be the place people go for Asian cinema. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah. In the same way that Shudder is for horror, we would
Mm-hmm.
like streaming to have, Terracotta is for Asian movies, right? Except Shudder's a great brand for horror because that's almost synonymous with a horror type adjective in the word. And I'm
Uh-huh.
trying to think of something Asian sounding enough, but I think rebranding will take forever, so I think we stick with Terracotta.
I mean, Terracotta's not bad. It's
Yeah.
it's it's geographically accurate, anyways.
I've never told anyone, well, I've only told a few people the story of why we're called Terracotta. So when you fill out these company incorporation documents, you have to find a name. So I came back to the box, so I just left it blank and I filled in all the other stuff. Damn, I've still got this name. What do I call this? What do I call this company? And I was looking around my living room at that point, and my dad had bought me a small terracotta warrior. Been to China recently for holiday, and that was like my mantelpiece, like terracotta. Like you just said, that's kind of Asian. That'll do, and I'll put that on my form. But through the years, we've had a lot of inquiries about like he was distributing terracotta pots. I don't really want to distribute for them in the UK. Apart from that, it's kind of okay.
That's funny. I guess that's funny. Nice. Well, thanks for sharing that story. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay. Well, I'm gonna continue to support and buy from you, and I would encourage people to do. I've had two shipments from y'all in the last year or so, and they've been.
And
It's
so it's
funny.
not the company. I've seen you put another order in recently.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like it's just funny. Like the sometimes it doesn't take as long to ship from the UK as you would think. More often than not, when I've placed an order from you, it's or one time I had to place an order for some obscure Kieslowski documentary that I was looking for, and it was on an eBay seller in the UK. And both times it got faster than it was less than 10 days. Um,
Really? Wow.
even with just general shipping, not even
Really?
advanced shipping.
That's
Or
good to
yeah,
hear. I mean, that's another thing I'd like to ask viewers, or sorry, listeners to give some sort of feedback because once it leaves the door, we don't know what happens. We do a box test, right? So we send ourselves a box. Every time we buy new packaging, when I say we, myself and my wife sometimes help me source packaging materials, right? So I try and send stuff back to myself to see what state the box looks like when it arrives to customers' hands. But I very rarely get to hear anything apart from complaints, right? So we only hear when people tell you something bad. If things good, please do let us know as well. Let us know what you think or how we can improve packaging to make it even better experience for you guys. And to hear that it arrives in 10 days is amazing. I didn't realize that.
yeah, I was always it's been impressive. I think in 2020 it was a different story,
Yeah.
but whatever those blocks were from just the standard shipping seem to have been removed. So
Wow.
um,
Pretty cool, man.
okay, yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it. This is
Oh,
great
thank you
talking
for
to you.
having me on. It's been really fun.
Good. Thanks to Joey. All right, talk soon.